Welcome to our channel, where every story brings a new twist and a thrilling adventure. Whether you're here for the drama, the laughs, or the lessons, you're in the right place. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Is it London, New York, or somewhere else? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next exciting chapter coming your way tomorrow. Your thoughts and engagement mean the world to us, so let's keep the conversation going. How one stupid decision at Buckingham Palace changed everything for this tourist. It was a typical night in London, filled with excitement and adventure as Alex Matthews and his two friends, Daniel and Chris, wandered through the bustling streets of the city. The trio, in their late 20s, had spent the evening at a lively pub in Soho, savoring pints of beer and laughing at the randomness of life. The drinks flowed freely, each one adding to the buzz of their spirits. What started as an innocent outing soon shifted into something far more reckless. Alex, feeling the effects of too many drinks, found his usual judgment clouded by whiskey. His confidence soared, and with it a sense of bravado. The night had taken its course, but none of them expected what would happen next. Daniel, noticing the iconic Buckingham Palace in the distance, pointed it out excitedly. "Hey, why don't we check out the palace?" he suggested. Alex, with a smirk playing on his lips, agreed without hesitation. They made their way towards the Grand Palace, not realizing the gravity of their decisions or the consequences that loomed ahead. As they stumbled into the square in front of the palace, their laughter echoed through the area, oblivious to the watchful eyes of the crowd around them. It was at this moment that Ryan, ever the instigator, saw the royal guard standing stoically near the entrance. "Look at them," Ryan chuckled. "They're just statues. They don't even blink." Chris, with his phone in hand, saw an opportunity to fuel the fire. "Alex, I bet you can't touch one of their rifles," he teased. The words hung in the air, and in that instant, Alex's mind sparked with the overconfidence that only alcohol could provide. "What if I do? Just for a second?" he slurred, grinning wide as his two friends laughed, egging him on. The crowd around them began to shift, noticing the loud, drunken antics of the three tourists. But Alex, lost in his bravado, couldn't care less. The royal guards, silent and unmoving, stood as symbols of British history and tradition, unaffected by the drunken chaos unfolding before them. But Alex, in his inebriated state, didn't see them as a symbol of duty. To him, they were a challenge, an obstacle to conquer. His hand reached out slowly, fingers trembling slightly from the alcohol, but determined nonetheless. His friends continued to egg him on, their laughter growing louder as he took another step closer to the soldier. The moment Alex's fingers hovered near the rifle, something in the air shifted. It wasn't the guard's movement, but the sound. A sudden, thunderous boom rang through the night as the guard's boots slammed the pavement. A sharp, commanding "Stand back!" sliced through the drunken haze. The force of the command was unlike anything Alex had anticipated. It was so powerful, so immediate, that the laughter around them quieted. The crowd fell silent, and in that moment, Alex realized the gravity of what he had done. The royal guard didn't need to raise a fist, nor did he need to shout any louder. His sheer presence alone, the authority in his stance, was enough to send a shockwave through the square. Alex stood frozen, his cocky grin replaced by wide-eyed fear. The guard took a deliberate step forward, moving with the poise and precision of someone who had dedicated his life to the uniform. His rifle was gripped tightly in his hands, and his gaze was unwavering, like a fortress built on centuries of tradition. As Alex took a staggering step back, he felt the ground betray him. His own feet tripped over the curb, sending him crashing to the pavement. There was no physical blow, no assault from the soldier. It was simply the power of the guard's command and presence that had knocked him down. To the crowd, it was a moment of pure comedy. Alex had been dropped without a single touch. His friends erupted in laughter, while bystanders whipped out their phones, capturing every moment of Alex's embarrassing fall. But for Alex, the humiliation was only beginning. The sight of him sprawled on the cold stone pavement, his face, flushed with shame, was only the first part of the spectacle. The crowd's laughter intensified as the onlookers recorded and pointed, feeding into his public humiliation. His friends couldn't contain themselves, their teasing laughter mocking Alex as he tried to regain his composure. "Dude, you look terrified," Ryan taunted. "He's about to cry," Mike gasped between fits of laughter. For Alex, it was a moment of reckoning. He realized too late that what seemed like a funny dare had crossed a line, and the consequences of that line were far greater than he had imagined. As he lay on the ground, trying to recover his dignity, he couldn't escape the reality that the royal guard, with just one step, had wiped away his confidence. The crowd's laughter, his friends' mockery, and the flashing of phones made it clear. His moment of bravado had turned into an unforgettable, humiliating spectacle. That night at Buckingham Palace, Alex Matthews learned a hard lesson. Some lines are not meant to be crossed, and in today's world, even the smallest misstep can spiral into a lifelong reminder of poor decisions. The laughter from Alex and his friends filled the air, echoing across the open space in front of Buckingham Palace. It was a sound of carefree joy, the kind that only alcohol and youthful confidence can produce. But what started as innocent fun was about to take a dangerous turn. Alex, feeling the effects of too many drinks, swaggered closer to the royal guard, his hand outstretched, fingers twitching with excitement. His friends, Daniel and Chris, egged him on with every step, their voices blending into a chorus of encouragement. "Do it, Alex, touch the rifle," they shouted, the alcohol in their systems only making them bolder. But the royal guard, standing immovable like a statue, didn't budge. His eyes remained focused ahead, his posture straight, and his rifle poised. He was a living symbol of the British military tradition, trained, disciplined, and unshaken by anything, even the drunken antics unfolding before him. To Alex, this soldier wasn't a symbol of respect or history. In his hazy state, the guard was nothing more than a challenge, something to conquer, a test of his bravado. He took another step forward, not noticing the growing attention from the surrounding crowd, or the tense atmosphere that had begun to form around them. As Alex's hand moved closer to the guard's rifle, a sudden, piercing sound rang through the air. The thunderous stomp of boots hitting the pavement shattered the night, and the deep, commanding voice of the guard sliced through the air. "Stand back." The words hit like a force of nature. They were loud, sharp, and unyielding. No room for misinterpretation. The power of the command was immediate, cutting through the drunken fog that had clouded Alex's senses. For a split second, Alex stood frozen, his fingers mere inches away from the rifle, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. He hadn't anticipated this, hadn't realized that his drunken dare could have consequences beyond a laugh. His friends' laughter died down as they saw the change in the air. The crowd, who had been quietly observing the scene, now watched with wide eyes, sensing something serious was unfolding. The royal guard's presence was like a wall of authority. His rifle remained firmly in his hands, his gaze unwavering. Alex, still standing there, began to feel the weight of the situation press down on him. The guard didn't need to raise a fist or even take a swing. His very presence, the decades of training and history behind him, was enough. He didn't flinch, didn't even acknowledge Alex as a threat. His response was precise, calculated, and it was clear to Alex that this soldier wasn't going to tolerate foolishness. Then, in one swift movement, the guard took a step forward. It wasn't aggressive, but it was decisive. The ground beneath Alex seemed to shift as the guard closed the distance between them. It wasn't the guard's physical presence that struck fear into Alex. It was the overwhelming power of authority. In that single step, Alex, feeling the gravity of the situation, took a step back, but his feet betrayed him. In slow motion, Alex stumbled backward, his body twisting in a desperate attempt to regain his balance. The pavement came up fast, and before he could react, he was sprawled on the ground, a twisted heap of limbs. His body slammed into the stone, a harsh, unforgiving thud that echoed through the square. The crowd gasped in collective disbelief, and then, like a wave crashing against a shore, The laughter erupted. For Alex, it was the worst kind of humiliation. He had been dropped without a single touch. There was no physical confrontation. The royal guard, with a single step, had defeated him. The guard once again resumed his stoic position, his rifle locked, in place. To him, Alex was nothing more than a fleeting distraction, a foolish tourist who had stepped too far. But for Alex, the humiliation was just beginning. The crowd's laughter rang in his ears, sharp and unforgiving. His friends were still recording, their phones capturing every moment of his fall. Daniel and Chris couldn't contain themselves, their mocking laughter filling the air. "Dude, you look terrified," Ryan shouted, still filming. "That's what you get for messing with a soldier," Chris added, gasping for air between laughs. Their teasing was relentless, and Alex, now painfully aware of how ridiculous he must look, couldn't escape the reality that he had crossed a line. His face burned with embarrassment as he scrambled to get back on his feet, his hands trembling. The stares of the crowd were like daggers, and the phone flashes only intensified his shame. "You all right, mate?" a voice from the crowd called out, followed by a chuckle from someone else. The comments and laughter rippled through the onlookers, amplifying his humiliation with every passing second. Alex, his head spinning, tried to regain some composure, but it was impossible. The royal guard, unfazed by the spectacle, stood tall and unmoving, a symbol of unyielding authority in a world that seemed to have no respect for the consequences of a single, stupid mistake. For Alex, this wasn't just a fall. It was a life-altering moment. The laughter from the crowd felt like 1,000 needles piercing through Alex's already fragile ego. His body was still sprawled on the cold stone pavement of Buckingham Palace Square, the weight of his drunken blunder pressing down on him with every passing second. Alex pushed himself up, his hands shaking, his head spinning from both the fall and the realization of what had just happened. He looked up, his eyes scanning the crowd, but all he saw were smartphones raised in the air, capturing every moment of his humiliation. His friends, Daniel and Chris, couldn't contain themselves. Their laughter rang out, echoing through the square, mocking him in the cruelest way possible. "Bro, you're famous now," Ryan shouted between bursts of laughter, his phone still recording every second of Alex's shame. "Look at you. You look terrified, man." His voice, filled with glee, felt like salt in the wound. Alex's face burned as he stood up, trying to regain some composure, but it was futile. The crowd, a mix of tourists and locals, had gone from casual curiosity to rapt attention. Some were filming the scene, others muttering under their breath, some even pointing and laughing. Few teenagers, too young to understand the full weight of what had just happened, snickered and whispered to each other, while older Brits shook their heads in disdain, their disappointment evident. "This guy's about to do something dumb," an older man muttered to his wife, loud enough for Alex to hear. Another person chuckled, "Another idiot who'll never learn." The word stung like a slap across his face. Alex, still fumbling to collect himself, felt the world shrink around him. The shame was suffocating. It wasn't just that he had tried to touch a royal guard's rifle, a reckless act in and of itself. It was the fact that the whole square had witnessed his complete fall from grace. His drunken attempt to test the guard had turned into a spectacle for everyone to laugh at. The royal guard, unmoved by the chaos, stood there like an unbreakable symbol of authority, while Alex had been knocked down without a single touch. He had been brought low by his own overconfidence, and now the world would know. His friends, still recording, were now offering their own brand of mockery. "Dude, you just got owned by a guy who didn't even move," Chris said, barely able to catch his breath. "He didn't even flinch. You got dropped by thin air." Alex's stomach twisted. Every part of him wanted to disappear, to melt into the pavement and vanish. But there was no escape. The phones, the laughs, the whispers, they were all too much. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of the crowd's judgment pressing in on him from all sides. His friend's laughter only made it worse, a cruel reminder that the moment had gone beyond a simple prank. It had become something much more, something that would follow him for a long time. As Alex stumbled backward, trying to regain some dignity, He was painfully aware of the fact that his mistake wasn't just a fleeting moment of stupidity. It wasn't just an embarrassing story he could laugh off later. No, this was something much bigger. The whole world had just witnessed it. And now, Alex was a viral sensation. He could already feel the weight of the consequences bearing down on him. Phones were still clicking, the flashes like constant reminders that this was not just a moment. It was now a permanent record of his failure. A man standing nearby caught his eye and muttered to his wife, "What an idiot." It stung, but there was nothing Alex could do about it. He had become the punchline of the night, a joke for the masses, a cautionary tale for anyone who thought it was a good idea to mess with a royal guard. A voice from behind caught his attention, and Alex turned to see two Metropolitan Police officers stepping into the square, their boots echoing against the pavement. The crowd's laughter slowly faded into a tense silence as the officers approached, their serious expressions cutting through the levity of the moment. Alex's heart sank. It wasn't enough that he'd been humiliated in front of the crowd. Now, the law was involved. He could feel the heat of their gaze, and for the first time all night his drunken bravado faded away completely. As the officers stood over him, the crowd parted slightly, giving them space. The first officer, tall and broad-shouldered, looked down at Alex with a sigh, his face a mix of exasperation and disbelief. "Fallen, have we?" he muttered, his voice dry, almost as if he had seen this kind of foolishness 100 times before. The second officer, arms crossed and unmoved, surveyed the scene with a calm detachment. "What do we have this time?" he asked, his tone uninterested. Alex, still dazed, scrambled to his feet, trying to explain himself, his voice shaky. "Wait, it was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it." But the first officer quickly raised his hand, cutting him off. "Save it," the officer said firmly. "Stand up properly now." Alex obeyed, his voice barely above a whisper as he stammered an apology. The weight of the officer's gaze was enough to silence any further words. He was no longer the drunken tourist causing a scene. He was now a fool under the eyes of the law, his every action being scrutinized, his reputation slipping further away. "Do you realize attempting to touch or interfere with a royal guard is a serious offense?" the officer asked, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable weight. Alex's stomach turned. He hadn't thought about the consequences beyond the embarrassment of his fall. But now, the reality of what he had done began to set in. And it was much worse than he had imagined. As Alex stood there, still trying to regain some semblance of dignity, the reality of his situation began to hit him harder than the fall he had just experienced. His knees wobbled beneath him, and his stomach churned as the two police officers loomed over him, their stern gazes unrelenting. The laughter from the crowd had faded, but the weight of the moment pressed down on him, harder than any punch he could have taken. What had started as a drunken dare at Buckingham Palace had quickly spiraled out of control into something far more serious. This wasn't just about a laugh anymore. It wasn't just about the ridiculous fall or the teasing of his friends. The consequences were much deeper than that. The first officer, still watching him with a look of disbelief, didn't seem in the least bit entertained by Alex's embarrassment. His partner, arms crossed, continued to assess the situation as though he'd seen it all before. For Alex, the lightheartedness of the moment had completely vanished, replaced by a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. His foolishness had gone from a drunken joke to a dangerous encounter with the law. The officers exchanged glances, their conversation sounding distant to Alex as his heart hammered in his chest. "What do we think?" the second officer asked, his tone clinical, as though they were making a simple decision about a minor incident. But Alex knew this wasn't a small mistake anymore. His mind raced through the possible consequences. Arrest, a fine. What would happen back home? Was he about to face serious charges for touching a soldier's rifle? Or worse, disrespecting an iconic British tradition? The first officer, scratching his chin, paused before speaking again. "You do realize that attempting to touch or interfere with a royal guard is a serious offense, right?" Alex flinched at the officer's words, the reality of the situation sinking in like a stone. He hadn't thought about any of this when he made that stupid decision. All he'd been focused on was impressing his friends, showing off for a laugh. But now the situation was far from a joke. The weight of potential charges was enough to stop Alex in his tracks. He could feel his blood run cold as he realized how much trouble he had gotten himself into. The thrill of his reckless actions had quickly faded, leaving only the stark reality of the consequences. Alex tried to scramble for an explanation, his voice shaky. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean anything by it, he stammered. But the officer didn't let him finish. The first officer raised his hand, signaling for silence. "Save it," he said firmly, his tone cold and commanding. Alex swallowed hard, realizing there was no escape from the mess he had created. The officer's next words hit harder than anything else. "Stand up properly now," he ordered, and Alex quickly complied, straightening his back and trying to appear more composed than he felt. But even as he did, the weight of the officer's gaze reminded him that his fate was no longer in his hands. The second officer remained silent, his arms folded across his chest as he watched Alex, no doubt weighing his options. There was no sympathy in his eyes, just an analytical stare that made Alex feel like a child caught in a lie. After what felt like an eternity, the officer finally spoke, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "So what do we think? Charge him or let him go?" Alex's heart raced. He was caught in limbo, waiting for the officer's verdict. Would they arrest him? Would this night end with him in a holding cell, facing charges for his stupid, drunken stunt? The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, the first officer broke the silence, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Nah, I think he's suffered enough," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Relief washed over him in an instant. He wasn't going to jail. But just as quickly, the officer's demeanor changed, and his voice dropped, low and menacing. "But if I see you near another guard tonight," he warned, taking a step closer to Alex, "you won't walk away next time. Understand?" Alex nodded frantically, the fear flooding his system once more. "Yes, sir, I'm gone. I won't do it again." With that, the officers turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing there, his heart still racing and his mind whirling. He had escaped this time, but the consequences of his actions were far from over. The crowd that had been watching, many of them still filming, slowly dispersed, but their comments, their whispers, followed him as he stumbled away. The damage was done. Even if the police hadn't pressed charges, Alex knew this moment would haunt him for a long time. He wasn't just facing the fallout of his drunken antics in front of the Royal Guard. He was about to face something even worse, the harsh glare of public humiliation. As Alex walked away, trying to put as much distance as possible between himself and the scene at Buckingham Palace, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A quick glance confirmed what he already feared. The viral video of his fall had already made its way online. The comments were rolling in, and they weren't kind. The realization hit him like a freight train. The public didn't just see him as the guy who tripped in front of the Royal Guard. They saw him as the fool who tried to challenge a symbol of British history. The video was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, it didn't matter. His drunken stunt was now a global punchline. His reputation had been shattered in the span of a few minutes, and the world would make sure to remind him of it. Alex had barely made it back to his hotel room when his phone started buzzing relentlessly. He collapsed onto the bed, still reeling from the nightmare he'd just experienced in front of Buckingham Palace. His body was sore from the fall, his pride shattered, but the worst of it was the feeling gnawing at him. Guilt, embarrassment, and the undeniable weight of the consequences. He had tried to laugh it off, but deep down, he knew things weren't going to be that easy. His stupid mistake was far from over. The police had let him go, sure, but the damage had already been done in the court of public opinion. The phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Alex picked it up, his hands still trembling. He unlocked the screen, dreading what he might see. His eyes widened as he saw the flood of notifications. A TikTok alert screamed at him. Your mention in UK fails video has 1.2 million views. His stomach dropped to his knees. He had seen viral videos blow up before, but this was different. This was his face, his terrified, drunken face, as he tried to touch the Royal Guard's rifle. This wasn't just a silly mistake anymore. This was global, and everyone was watching. With a sinking feeling, he opened his social media apps. Twitter was flooded with tweets mocking him. Instagram posts, memes, and comments were everywhere. Bro tried to rob a British soldier and got bodied by thin air, one tweet read, accompanied by a video of Alex stumbling backward, falling flat on his face. Another meme showed his fall next to a toddler tripping, captioned, "Same energy." His stomach twisted into knots. There was no escaping this. The comments didn't stop there. Every platform, every comment section had turned into a theater of ridicule. On Reddit, the post read, "Watch this guy challenge a royal guard and fail spectacularly. His pride, gone. His dignity, shattered." People were having a field day with his blunder. Alex's heart pounded as he scrolled through the endless stream of laughter, mockery, and humiliation. His fall wasn't just a fleeting embarrassment. It was a permanent mark on the internet, a moment frozen in time for everyone to see, replay, and laugh at. But it wasn't just the online strangers who were poking fun at him. His phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from his mom. His fingers hovered over the screen before he opened it. Her message read, "Ethan, what the hell am I seeing on Facebook? Are you okay? Your grandma thinks you're being deported." Alex's blood ran cold. His own mother had seen the video. Worse, his grandma, who had no idea what TikTok was worried that he was being sent home in disgrace. His phone rang a moment later, and Alex didn't even need to check the caller ID. He knew who it was. His dad. "So you lost a fight? To a guy who didn't even move, huh?" His dad chuckled lightly, but the humor didn't mask the sting in his words. "You've really outdone yourself this time, kid." Alex squeezed his eyes shut, burying his face in his hands. The weight of it all was too much. This wasn't just a personal disaster. It was a family one. He had embarrassed them, made a fool of himself, and now everyone he knew would forever associate him with that one stupid moment. He felt like he was drowning in the relentless flood of notifications, the voices in his head, and the knowledge that his life had been irrevocably altered in a single, reckless instant. His phone buzzed once more, and Alex glanced at the screen. An email from his boss popped up, and he nearly choked when he saw the subject line. "Alex, we need to talk." His stomach twisted into knots again. He opened the email, his eyes scanning the words with growing dread. "I assume you've seen the video by now. So have a lot of our clients. We need to discuss the company's reputation. Give me a call." The email felt like a final blow to his already shattered sense of self. He had been careless, reckless, but this was something far worse. His professional future was now in jeopardy. What had started as a fun night with friends, a night of silly stunts and laughs, had turned into a PR nightmare. His boss wasn't the only one who had seen it. His clients had too. Alex could almost hear the judgment in their voices, the questions about his character and judgment. One foolish mistake had the power to ruin everything he had worked for, and he was about to lose it all over something so stupid. Alex slumped back against the bed, the full weight of the situation crashing down on him. This wasn't just a fleeting embarrassment. This was a life-altering event the internet never forgets. And in the age of social media, one bad decision can follow you for a lifetime. As Alex stared at his phone, the magnitude of his actions finally sank in. His pride, his reputation, his career, all of it had been reduced to a viral video, replayed and laughed at by millions. He had become the punchline to a joke he never intended to be part of. And now there was no going back. Thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's story. What do you think about Alex's crazy experience with the Royal Guard? Have you ever had a moment where you've done something impulsive or regrettable, only to face the consequences in a big way? It's crazy how one decision, especially under the influence, can completely change the course of a night. Drop a comment below and share your story. What lesson do you think Alex learned from his viral fall? And do you think the internet is too quick to judge? We're excited to hear your opinions on the power of social media and how one moment can define a person's public image. Let's keep the conversation going. What would you have done if you were in Alex's shoes? And don't forget, if you want to see more dramatic stories like this one, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You won't want to miss our next episode coming tomorrow. We've got even more shocking twists, heartfelt lessons, and viral moments waiting for you. Thanks again for being part of the community.